Hey guys, I'm Cody Adair and this is Jason Merkel, and we're with the marketing team here at Horizon, and today we're going to talk about the all brand new Carbon Z Cub SS. This is the generation 2, so to speak, of the original Carbon Z Cub. So we're just here to talk about, take some of your live questions and go over what some of the new features are.
Yeah, so it's been a while since we've had a chance to do a live Q&A video and that we've had a chance to talk about some of the new products in more detail. We had a very busy last couple of months. We had Joe Nall, for example, that had a lot of us out of the office for a while there. We had our RC Fest, very big RC Fest after that, which was a phenomenal event that we were able to kind of share radio control, everything radio control, from our airplanes to quads to cars, crawlers. We even had a little boat pond set up. So we were able to bring out the local community and show them the RC experience, show them what Horizon Hobby is all about. Then shortly thereafter that we had the EDF Jet Jam. That was our first time going to that event. It was a phenomenal event, great flying field, one of the nicest flying fields I've ever been to in the country. We just flew and flew and flew. We put so many flights on our EDFs that weekend. It was phenomenal. We had a great time. The crowd there was great. The guys at the field were fantastic. And then we came back, and for the first time in a long time, we've actually had some really good weather around here. And so a lot of us have been out flying, doing other videos for some other new upcoming products. We're always working on new stuff. So we got a lot of cool, exciting things coming up here shortly. And then also in the meantime, we've been getting stuff like this to the market. So Carbon Z Cubs actually did start shipping out a couple weeks ago.
Right. Yep.
So some guys have gotten theirs now. They've had a chance to fly them, and I've seen nothing but positive comments. People are absolutely loving the airplane. The original Carbon Z Cub, which came out many years ago, kind of was the first of its kind. It was a giant scale foam airplane.
Right.
So did you have one of those original ones?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of guys did. That was their first giant scale airplane. It was really the first time that a foam airplane had been made that large with that level of stiffness. So Carbon Z, a lot of people don't know this, Carbon Z doesn't really have anything to do with the size of the airplane.
Right.
We actually had been using Carbon Z construction for some time. Carbon Z construction is a combination of foam, of course, with different types of structure internally. Plywood, some balsa, some carbon fiber. It's a fusion of all those things to give us a lightweight yet stiff airframe. And so we used it in some smaller models as well. But over the years, the last couple years, most people have started to identify Carbon Z as giant scale foam. And again, that's not necessarily the case. That's not all that we apply Carbon Z to. But that said, in most cases, when people hear Carbon Z, they assume it's got to be big, it's got to be giant scale, and this airplane is definitely that. Not a lot of people that are newer to the hobby know what giant scale even means. Giant scale is effectively a reference to airplanes that years ago there was an organization that established the rules for what a giant scale radio controlled aircraft was, and it was in this case a single wing airplane, 80-inch wingspan or more. This is just over 80 inches, so it is a giant scale aircraft. When I was a kid learning how to fly radio controlled airplanes, this was very big.
Yes.
This was a very uncommon size to see at the field. This was a very expensive model to own. Having multiple servos on surfaces was a big deal back then. And so it was unusual to see aircraft this size, which is why that organization existed, because they would have fun flies for just giant scale aircraft. In fact, maybe a lot of people don't know this, but Joe Nall originally was for giant scale aircraft only.
Sure.
And to this day, the classic flight line does follow those giant scale rules. And so this airplane can fly on the classic flight line at Joe Nall, even though it's electric powered and even though it's a foamy, because it does qualify for giant scale. So we're excited to bring it back in this form, and we've made a number of changes. And the original one flew great, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. But that said, since then, we've come up with some other things that I think improve the convenience and also improve the performance overall, and just give you a better value, a better, more fun to fly aircraft that's more enjoyable to fly, that's more capable than the original was. And so obviously, I think one of the biggest things that people notice is the color.
Yep.
It's a very different color than it was. So what color is it though?
It's orange. It is orange. It's not red. It's an orange airplane.
Yeah, it's definitely orange. I think some of the photos and maybe on some screens it looks a little bit red in person, but you can see I wore my Spectrum hat today, so you guys can see I got orange bars on there. It's an orange airplane.
Right.
And so we didn't intend to deceive or confuse anybody. But again, it is an orange aircraft. The original was the blue. We do have, it's basically the same what I consider trim scheme. We just changed the color.
Right.
And this color is actually available on some of the full-scale Carbon Cub models.
Sure.
This is a trim scheme that you can get from the factory on the aircraft. I love it. It's super easy to see. Maybe orange isn't personally my favorite color in the world, but it looks awesome on this airplane. It has a lot of presence in the air, but also really great visibility in there. So I think that's one of the first things that people notice.
Right.
So what are some of the other things that people have asked about? What's new?
So I think one of the biggest things is when you went up to the field with the original one, the blue one, you had to do quite a bit to actually assemble the model to get together. So one of the biggest changes that I've noticed from compared to the previous one is we've actually removed. Previously on the old one, you had screws that you actually had to have tools and things like that to have at the field with you to assemble it, to put it together. For this one, we actually put in thumb screws. So there's no longer any need to bring a tool with you really at all to assemble this model at the field. It goes together a lot faster when compared to the previous one. So, I mean, literally 10 minutes at the field? You can have
probably
it assembled,
not even that.
if that. I mean, it's a lot faster. We've done a lot of things to have you out at the field and flying in no time compared to the old one. So very efficient there.
It is a two-piece wing like the original was, which makes it relatively easy to transport because no particular section is that large. Now, granted, you probably aren't going to be able to get the fuselage with the tail feathers installed into a small car very easily, but you probably can get it. If you have a car that has back seat that folds down, you could probably get it through the trunk that way. Obviously, if you have a small SUV, it's no problem to transport. I love it because it makes it really easy to store at home with the two wing panels kind of up on my wing rack. I'll actually stand the fuselage vertically so it doesn't take up as much space. So that was a nice change. We did keep the strut attachment the same, so it does have basically like body clips or these small cotter
little
pins.
quick connects. It's like
it's quite easy to install and remove those. So really no major change there. Oh, something else that we did, I actually popped mine inside here just for convenient and safe keeping. We actually kind of just decided to add these as a little touch. They're not necessarily that scale per se, but they kind of look that way. We've got some antennas that pop on to the rear, or you can put on the front, whatever you prefer. But you've got these really cool little snap-on antennas that kind of add to the look there.
On the top.
They cover the kind of simulated fuel cap looking caps on the thumb screws, and so it's kind of a nice touch. I think it adds a little flavor to it. And they're cool because they're carbon fiber, so they're actually pretty darn tough. And so again, I usually store those inside of my my battery compartment here. I just kind of slide them into the foam there for safekeeping when I've got the airplane taken apart. So that was a big change. We wanted to improve that convenience factor. There are some things, by the way, I want to point out. We couldn't change everything because this airplane, it was already a tooled airplane. It already existed. Rather than starting again from the ground up, we took the original tooling and modified it. Big reason for that was to keep the price down. If we were to make this airplane again today and have to remake the whole tooling that is required to mold the airplane, it would have raised the price considerably. So what we did is we tweaked as much as we could without having to go to a new set of tooling. And so we were not able to change the servo attachment. So in this case, it did have what were kind of captured female connectors in the fuselage, and then you've got two wires that come out of the wing for your flap servo and your aileron servo, but they're very easy to plug in. So we don't have our new kind of our own exclusive design hands-free servo connection system, but it's not hard to plug it's so super easy because the female ones are already captured there at the wing root. You just plug in your servos. They're already labeled. It's not hard to fish the wires down into the wing.
There's also an opening in the wing here for you to tuck your wiring as you're feeding the wing on. So it's really simple, not
very
too difficult
simple.
at all.
So no issues there. It's still again less than 10 minutes for sure at the field to put it together and get ready to fly, and that's really nice for a giant scale airplane.
Absolutely.
Because years ago when guys were flying airplanes this size, they had like 15 screws to put the struts on, and they would have to go and put wing bolts in. They have to pop this canopy or the the window in the top here out and put screws in from the inside. There were a lot more steps required to get a giant scale model like this broken down, transported to the field, and put together at the field. So it's really nice that we changed those things. And so again, I just want to point out that we weren't able to change all the things that we would have liked to change, but we changed as much as we possibly could.
While we're on the subject of the wing, I noticed that the wing tips look a little different compared to the blue one.
Yeah, that's a huge change. And so I'm going to tilt the airplane up here so you guys can see that. So basically the wingtip is squared off now, and some people will say, wow, Cubs never have squared off wingtips. It's actually not true. Cub crafters themselves, they offer a plain wingtip. It's a wingtip kind of add-on for Super Cubs in particular. So it fits some of the Cub models, and it's very much like this. And so not only is it squared off, we actually have a drooped wingtip here, so it kind of wraps around and down, and you'll actually see that that's a similar wingtip design to what we have on the Timber aircraft, for example. And the reason for that is aerodynamically it improves some of the aerodynamics out here at the tip, which helps to prevent tip stalls, which the original Carbon Z Cub, if you were not careful and you got it too slow, you could get it into a tip stall, into a spin situation, kind of unexpectedly. I actually saw a number of people crash them because they were really low, really slow, and kind of got it up on the wingtip and stalled it, and it kind of spun in. And I know it's a Cub and it has great slow speed handling, but by going to this wingtip design, we have even better better slow speed handling now. So another improvement is we got more wing area out here. So the original wing kind of, the total wingspan was the same, but imagine a lot of this section back here was missing, and up here in the front at the leading edge were missing. So we added quite a bit of wing area. What's nice is in the air it looks a lot bigger, but you can feel the lighter wing loading as a result of that. The other thing is that the aileron got larger, or the aileron area increased, so now we have better roll authority. So that was a nice change there. And so it looks visually different. I really like it. I'm really used to this wingtip shape now, and I think it kind of looks good. Some people have said it looks like a Husky, or it looks like a such and such, or it looks more like a Timber. And all those things are true because, again, that's where this wingtip shape kind of came from. So most of the other features are the same on the wing. We do have the VGs up here, and then we do have separate flaps and separate ailerons. But one other change that we made is we changed the design of the flap hinge. So now the flaps can actually go both ways. So if you wanted to, you can actually mix full span ailerons by mixing your flaps to your ailerons. The manual does cover that. It does show you how to do that. So for guys that maybe have recently bought a Timber X, for example, they've maybe experienced that firsthand. This aircraft has a similar option as well. You do have to change, and this one is the way it comes out of the box, so you do have to change the geometry of the flap servo arm. So right now it's set up so that full deflection on the flap, the arm is all the way forward. Basically, if you're going to use it as an aileron, you just have to change the position of the servo arm on the neutral point of the servo. It's very easy to do. The manual covers that, and then you can have full span ailerons even with just a 6-channel transmitter. You don't have to have a 7+ channel transmitter. That said, I do always recommend if you can have a 7 or 8 channel transmitter. If you still have a 6-channel transmitter, we're going to have more and more airplanes that have 7+ channels coming out. And so I highly recommend, as soon as you guys can, upgrade to a DX8E, a DX8, an IX12, DX9. I would definitely get a transmitter with more channels so you can separate more and more functions out as time goes on.
It makes your life a little easier too when it comes down to programming, for sure.
Exactly. And so you guys can probably see now how big this airplane really is. Yeah, we talk about the wingspan is giant scale, the fuselage is pretty big, but the wing is just massive. Look at all the wing area that this airplane has. And sometimes guys will say, well, I just can't imagine paying $400 for a foam airplane. But look at this. This is huge. So, when I was younger and learning to fly, an airplane this size, a wood ARF, for example, would be about $400. Then you'd have to install your power system, and you have to install your servos, and the next thing you know, you're at $1,500. So this is a tremendous value. Not only does it come out of the box pretty much done for you, but it is a giant scale size. It flies fantastic. In fact, it's lighter than a lot of wood airplanes were back in the day. A lot of airplanes this size would have been 15 pounds or so. This is many pounds lighter than that, and so the performance is absolutely phenomenal. It has good slow speed characteristics, has very good power loading, so you actually do have plenty of power, more than scale power, to perform aerobatics. You can kind of hang on the prop depending on your battery and your weight setup. So again, I think it's really important for people to see the size and really understand that for the price, it's a heck of a lot of airplane. It really is an incredible value, and I think sometimes guys have to see it in person to really appreciate it. But I got to say, guys, it is a good deal when you consider how much airplane you're getting for the cost.
You did mention power system. I kind of want to go back to that a little bit. So is this the same power system as the previous Carbon Z Cub, or is there anything that's changed?
It's similar. So the motor KV and things are very similar, but this is the motor that has the updated design that we used in the Carbon Z Cessna 150. So we basically took the motor, which, yes, some original Carbon Z Cub owners may remember they had some issues with the motors. Maybe there were only 2 bearings in that motor, and so what would happen is, due to gyroscopic forces, sometimes one of the bearings would fail, and then that would actually sometimes take out the ESC. So some guys might have had ESC failures, motor failures, or their airplane would sound funny when they'd run the motor up sometimes. So this is the updated motor design with the 3rd bearing. It's more reliable, it's smoother. We also changed to the prop that was on the Cessna as well, because the original prop that was on the Cub, it was the material it was made from would actually absorb moisture. And so on days when it was high humidity, it would absorb moisture and go out of balance. On days it was dry, it would have been maybe fine. And so now the power system overall is just much smoother, much more reliable. So those motor failures are not going to happen as often, if ever. And the same thing with the ESC. The ESC is going to be a more reliable setup now because you don't have this motor with changing loads and side loads and adding a lot of current consumption and having a lot of drag issues and higher amp draw and so on and so forth. So again, power system is not necessarily different power output wise, but it's just a lot smoother and a lot more reliable.
Right, right. Now going internal a little bit here, battery-wise, what's the battery specifications here?
So it is similar to the original. So most guys flew the original on a 6S 5000, and you can certainly do that. And so we've flown it with everything from a 4S battery up to a 6S, just like the CZ Cessna. It'll fly fine on a 4S. It may not have unbelievable power, but it's like better. It's similar to scale, but maybe a little better than scale power. Right. You can fly with a 5S battery if you have that. But of course, most of us are flying on 6S batteries. And what we've got represented here are the most popular sizes. The 5000 in the middle probably being the most popular. But we've flown it with the 4000. It flies fantastic with that. And then it does fit all the way up to a 7000. So we've got the Spectrum Smart 7000 here, which I've been using quite a bit in models like this or our F4 or even our new Havoc EDF. That's a phenomenal battery. It gives that little extra flight time. I kind of like it on a windy day in particular. It's a little more weight than a 5000, and it kind of helps the airplane handle a little bit better. And then something else that we did is we changed the way that the battery mounts inside the airplane. And so some guys have asked us, why didn't we change the battery compartment opening to make it larger? And again, so there were some things we could not change, and that was one of them, unfortunately. This is already a tooled airplane, so we couldn't change the battery hatch area without basically making an entire new fuselage mold. And so what we did is the guys at Morgan Mill many years ago had come up with a really great kind of battery cartridge system. And we didn't use that design exactly, but that helped inspire this design, which is basically a battery tray. You mount the battery in here. You got some Velcro straps across. You guys can see it fits up to a 7000, no problem.
Nice.
And then once you have it in the tray, there are some tabs on the bottom here that slide into a plastic tray inside the airplane. And I'm actually going to do this without even really looking. So I can slide it down into the battery compartment. It locks into place, and then once it locks into place, there's a tab on the front that you just push down, and boom, the battery is locked into place. It's that simple. So now you can do it with almost one hand. You don't have to have two hands going down inside this pretty small opening to get the battery secure, having to put straps across it. When you're ready to remove it, you just pop that clip, pull the battery out. Much easier, much more convenient.
Just to comment on that, there's different actual mounting spots along the battery tray inside there, so you can compensate for different CG levels.
Exactly.
So like if you have a 7,000 milliamp hour pack, you obviously wouldn't want to have that all the way forward towards the prop. You'd want to have that back a little bit to compensate for the CG. So there's different areas inside the tray for you to compensate for that different, where you want the different battery tray to be. So pretty cool.
So we call it a multi-position and quick release battery tray, mounting tray. And that is, again, an improvement over the original by a long shot. That said, something I would personally do, and I'm going to do with my own personal model here, is I'm going to put some clear tape around the edges of the painted sections here to help protect it. Because even just popping it open and closed and kind of handling the edges here, it can wear the paint off over time. Even putting it in with just one hand and being very careful, you're still going to nick the edges. And so by having some clear tape on there, and it'll take some time to apply it well so it looks nice. But I've seen a couple other guys that have done the same thing, and I definitely recommend that if you want to protect that paint up here in the battery compartment area. And you mentioned, again, the battery can move forward and aft depending on the size and weight of your battery to adjust CG. If you are using lighter batteries like a 6S 3200, which it flies fine with, or a 4S 5000, 4S 3200, it flies fine with all those batteries, but keep in mind you may need to add a little bit of nose weight. You may have to have the battery all the way forward in the mounting tray area, and then also add some nose weight. Just check the CG like you should always do with any airplane when you're out before you make your first flights. And then once you've got the weight in there, you can add the weight to the battery tray if you want and have different trays for different batteries. You can stick the weights inside and have them on Velcro so you can take them in and out. But I wanted to point that out because there's a wide range of batteries that this flies on, and that will affect the CG accordingly.
Now, going forward, one of the other things I noticed is we actually, looks like we have a new landing gear on.
Oh yeah, that's a big improvement.
Big improvement. So I think from having a lot of experience with the original Cub, this is probably one of my favorite improvements that we've done. If you get a good look at the gear here, you actually have a lot of flex on that gear.
So it is genuinely shock absorbing. It's articulated, somewhat similar to the design that you might find on some of our timber aircraft. And we beefed up the mounting area a lot, so it's not going to break. In fact, when the guys were testing this before we went to production, they were over at the factory and they were just bringing this thing in and slamming it onto the ground from 10 feet up. And you can even see in slow motion the whole airplane, the fuselage flexes and everything. The landing gear mounts never broke. So the landing gear is much more durable than it's ever been. The articulation is fantastic because it helps on rough surfaces in particular, find out really rough grass, or if you're flying off of gravel. We also went to larger wheels, and in addition to larger wheels, we went to softer tires. So the original Carbon Z Cub, some people might remember, it had some pretty hard foam tires.
It did, yep.
These are foam tires. They're a little bit softer, actually quite a bit softer.
A little larger too.
Yeah, they're a little bit larger. So when you land on a hard surface like pavement, it doesn't bounce like it used to bounce, in part because of the shock absorbing gear, but also because the tires are softer. And then the larger tire just helps for handling over rough surfaces in particular.
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And we didn't bring it, but the floats, of course,
yes,
they do fit. So
yes.
The Carbon Z floats that were available for the original Cub, they do fit. We did change the way they mount a little bit, so we adjusted the mounting area to now offer some cross braces as well.
Okay.
So before it didn't have braces that went front to back, and now we do have that. So you have to buy the floats. If you have an old set, they will work, but you won't have the new mounting hardware.
Sure.
So we recommend getting a new set of the floats that we have now. We adjusted the design of those when we came out with the Cessna. We made a multi position so that way they could work on multiple airplanes.
Right.
And then we also have a separate set of wire mounting strut for this particular airplane. So you have to buy the floats separately, you have to buy those struts separately. But it is a much better mounting setup now. It's a lot stiffer. It doesn't kind of rock around as much on the floats, especially if you're flying off of a rough water surface.
Right. Yeah. Now, what about price? So what are we looking at for Bind and Fly?
So the Bind and Fly Basic is $429.99, so about $430 in the US. And so then the plug and play version, which is everything the same but no 636 receiver, that is $399, so $400. So it's a little more expensive than it was when it was originally out.
Okay.
But that said, we have added quite a few features to it.
Sure.
And then also in the Bind and Fly, the original one had AS3X, and for those who maybe still are unsure what AS3X is exactly, AS3X is 3-axis gyros that smooth things out. They do not get in your way. When you move the stick, you are in command. If you're not moving the stick and you're flying in blustery conditions, instead of your plane bouncing around a bunch, now it's just bouncing around maybe a little bit or maybe not at all.
Right.
And so AS3X is great because it makes the airplane feel smoother, makes it feel even bigger than it already is.
Yes.
That said, in the Bind and Fly version now, we've added Safe Select.
Right.
So if you're a less experienced pilot and you kind of are nervous about flying your first giant scale model, or maybe you don't have a lot of time flying airplanes, you turn on Safe. Safe has pitch and bank angle limits.
Right.
So you can't bank more than X number of degrees, roughly 40 degrees. You can't pitch up too much or pitch down too much. You basically can't get the airplane upside down to crash.
Right.
And then when you let go of the stick, when you let go of the aileron elevator stick, it goes back to level.
Right.
Automatically. It's just like our beginner mode in a lot of our trainer aircraft. And so also as an experienced pilot, I always bind with it on. That way, if maybe somebody comes up next to me and says, hey, can I try that? I'm not sure if I'm a good enough pilot. Rather than getting out a buddy box, I can say, here, flip on to Safe, get a feel for it. And I know it's not a genuine feel of the airplane per se, but they're flying it. They're kind of getting a general idea of how it flies. Or let's say, and I've had this happen to myself, where I fly through the sun, I lose orientation, or there's bugs on my face, or there's a dog nipping at my heels. I can flip it into Safe and either let go of the stick and let the plane go level until I can regain my composure, or I can actually just kind of bury the stick in the corner and it does kind of a nice circuit all by itself as I kind of gain my bearings again, and so on and so forth. So I know some guys, especially guys that have been in the hobby a long time, and guys, I've been in the hobby almost my whole life, so almost 30 years doing this now, and I absolutely appreciate Safe. I know you don't need it. I don't need Safe by any stretch. I can land just fine without it. I can take off just fine without it. I can fly around just fine without it. But there are a lot of extra tangible benefits of Safe that you may not even realize.
Yes.
Or someone like my dad, he can fly fine, but he gets nervous sometimes. Or again, sometimes he flies through the sun or something like that. Now with Safe, he can just slip into that. If he's nervous at all, boom, regain his composure.
Right back into it.
And maybe he's not comfortable enough even at that moment to land without Safe. Turn on Safe, makes it super easy to land.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
So we have that available as well. And again, the plug and play version is available without the receiver. If you already have a receiver or you want to use something different as well.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, one thing also we didn't probably go into a lot of detail on yet is the optional tow mechanism.
The tow release, yep.
So basically we include the hardware here. You can mount a servo in. It's got a pin to hold a tow line. So if you wanted to tow, they could tow relatively large gliders.
Sure.
We've towed some pretty big and heavy gliders with the original version and this version as well. And then most of the release doesn't usually happen at the airplane. We have a servo in there as kind of an emergency release.
Right.
Usually the release happens on the glider end, but we do have that ability here. So that mechanism is included. Right. Again, there were optional floats. So there are more things that you can do beyond just what the airplane is out of the box as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's pretty exciting.
It is a very exciting model. Very
I
cool
love
stuff.
the way it flies. I got to tell you, it flies flies noticeably better than the original.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it would feel different, but it is.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things is the assembly time at the field.
Yeah,
I mean,
big
that has
improvement.
been shortened, very big improvement. Also the landing gear, being able to land, without the worry of breaking something. I mean, you can still break something if you pancake it, but that gear really spreads out.
If you break that gear, you probably broke the plane.
Yeah, I mean, the fuselage is probably going to take a hit too.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stuff here. Seems to be a pretty good improvement based off the original one.
It is, yes. And so again, our aim was to improve the convenience, to improve the performance, and then also some other things that we've been doing over the last few months are experimenting with other, maybe add-ons. So for example, it has really good power. It has more than scale power. With the right battery power setup, it'll hang on the prop, that kind of thing. And guys might remember this from the original Carbon Z Cub, but a really great upgrade for this is the E-flite Power 60 motor.
Sure.
So if you want even more power, it's like 25% more power. You
Absolutely.
can bolt that in. That motor, you do have to remount just a tiny bit of plastic for the wheel collar that's on the back of the motor. That's holding the shaft in place to clear the firewall area, but that's it. Or maybe I think it's a little bit of the metal X mount, that's right. But basically it's very easy to bolt that motor in and you have an instant upgrade in power.
Sure.
And then some guys, when they do that, they might upgrade the ESC. You don't necessarily have to, you can. So there is the option to put more power into it, and with more power you can hover it down low, punch out vertical, no problem. And actually it's very interesting how aerobatic this airplane is.
Absolutely.
It's capable of slow, smooth scale flying, and it's awesome to fly like that.
Yeah.
But when you have the full span ailerons mixed in, it's actually very capable. It rolls really well.
Yep.
You can do rolling circles, no problem. You can do great snap maneuvers, really nice blenders.
Yep.
If you have more power, you can hang on the prop and do some high alpha and some, kind of like rolling Harriers and things like that a lot easier.
Sure.
So it's got a very, very wide flight envelope, and I appreciate airplanes like that. Planes that I can say, I'm only going to take this one plane to the field today,
Right.
and it's going to be great because I can fly it slow. I can do some nice touch and goes. I can, roll on one wheel down the runway, and then I can punch out, go vertical.
Exactly.
I can do some 3D aerobatics, and so this is one of the few airplanes out there that has that really wide flight envelope.
It has the potential to be a plane for everybody.
Right.
So we're introducing the giant scale class to pretty much any user who wants to get into this hobby, and this is a really good airplane to get into if that's your goal, is to get in the giant scale, something quick to assemble at the field. That also has the ability to do good vertical, slow stall characteristics. It's just an all-around very good model.
Yep. I think this is going to be a very, very popular model for a lot of people. In fact, I think this will be the first giant scale airplane for a lot of people.
Sure.
And some people have asked, how does this fly relative to the Cessna? And Cubs and Cessnas are different animals.
Sure.
Both at one point have been trainers for people in the full scale world. But I love the way the Cessna flies. Cessna is real smooth.
Great airplane.
I love the way it looks in the air. I really like tricycle landing gear on certain surfaces, kind of dragging it in with the nose high, so on and so forth. That airplane flies fantastic, and I can still see a reason for a lot of people to have both, potentially. I don't think one is necessarily considerably different or better than the other. They are different, and I do think that there's enough difference there to justify potentially having both in your hangar. Nice thing is they use the same battery.
Yep.
So
there are two different classifications too. I mean, you have the traditional Cessna, traditional Cub. They're both kind of legacy airplanes.
Right.
So, I mean, there is some differences, like you mentioned, between them, but they are both very good flying airplanes, and they both are two different beasts, kind of, so to speak. So.
Yeah, exactly. So we've been on live for a while now. Have any significant questions come up? Anything we haven't addressed so far? I think we've covered a lot of things so far. So we're pretty good on that. Awesome. So again, these are available now, at least in the U.S. in most stores, or at your favorite local hobby shop, online hobby shop, horizonhobby.com. We also do have some. Well, we did ship some to Europe already. They already sold out. There are more coming. So roughly a month after this video is live, there should be more stock in Europe and in the UK as well. It's actually selling, I think very well because people are really appreciating the changes that we've made.
Absolutely.
And I think people are starting to better understand the value. Over the last couple of years, prices have gone up for a lot of things, and foam airplanes are actually getting more and more expensive to design and produce as the prices for aluminum go up, which the molds are made, our steel that the molds are made out of. Those different materials are increasing the bring a product to market cost. So that's actually why we don't do it a lot anymore, but we do try to bring some models back like this that are very popular. So hey, if there's any other models that you guys miss that you'd like us to bring back, maybe some other big things, let us know. We always like to hear what airplanes you might miss that we have before and don't have anymore. And this was actually one when we ran out of them, people were like, hey, what the heck happened? Where's the Cub?
Right.
And we've been selling it for a number of years at that point, and we did intentionally bring it off the market so we could make these changes. It took us about a year to get through all the changes. We did modify the tooling, that takes time.
Yep.
We did have to do some testing, and then we did have to do some tuning on. We actually changed the AS Rakes a little bit, tuning, and then also added Safe Select in there as well. So these things don't happen overnight.
Right.
They take time.
A lot of it was brought on by you guys, the community. I mean,
Right.
a lot of you guys are commenting what you want in the original Carbon Z Cub versus, what your pros and cons were of that model. So we listen to you guys. We're watching the forums. We're watching the comments on YouTube. And these are the kind of changes that you can expect from us. I mean, we're listening to you guys. I personally wanted the Quick Connect system. I mean, it really shortens your time, as I mentioned before, to get your plane assembled at the field. It's just an all-around good improvement. And keep the comments coming. Keep the feedback coming, because like I said, we are listening to you guys, and we do make changes when and where we can.
Yes, we definitely can. We do listen. And a lot of us here, we're RC guys too.
Right.
I think sometimes guys forget that. A lot of us have been doing this our whole lives. We love flying. It's not only our work, it's our hobby.
Right.
And so, like tomorrow's gonna be a beautiful day. We're gonna go out and do some flying.
Right.
I think you're gonna do some float flying tomorrow.
We are.
You're gonna fly one of these on
Yeah,
floats
we
tomorrow,
are. Some
right?
float flying footage. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
fantastic.
excited.
Yeah, and actually, when we were shooting the video for this originally, the weather was horrible.
Yes.
And we have a short video that's out there for this right now. We're gonna finally, now that the weather is good, get out and shoot a bunch of video for this, and we've got a couple other models that we recently came out with. We're gonna shoot some more video for, and some other models that are about to come out.
Yep.
That we're gonna shoot
Top
some video for. Yeah. We actually got a busy schedule coming up here shortly with some new product releases. Pretty excited about that. We got Oshkosh coming up next week. So
Oshkosh,
if anybody is going to be at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, we're going to have a booth out there. You guys, if you haven't seen us in person, this will be on display out there. Of course, we'll have the Havoc, which everybody's been asking about and talking about. That's going to be out there. Havocs, by the way, for those that might be interested, those are on the way to us now. They're going to be here not any day now, but within the next couple weeks. So right around this tail end of July, could push into early August, probably won't, as long as everything is fine, no congestion at the port, no holdups with customs or anything like that. So Havocs are on the way, but again, Cubs are in stock. They are available right now. Quantities are somewhat limited, so if you want to get one of these and enjoy it during flying season, now is the time to get your hands on one. Again, they'll be available at your favorite local hobby shop, your favorite online hobby shop, horizonhobby.com. And again, if you're in Europe, you may not be able to get your hands on one right this moment, but you can pre-order, back order now, and they should be in stock probably around the middle of August to end of August, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah. Any other questions or concerns? All right, good. Hopefully we covered everything for everybody then.
I think we did. It looks pretty good.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate you. Be sure to share this video with anybody that might be interested, and then also to post any other questions or comments that you have, and we'll follow up on those as well after the fact.
If you have suggestions on what should come next, let us know also in the comments. Again, we're listening to your feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.